Okay. We are streaming live on Facebook now, and we're just waiting for the rabbi to appear, who's appearing to have some technical difficulty with logging into the webinar.
Ambassador, we still can't see your video. Perhaps you need to choose which video you're using on your computer with the little arrow next to the video. Just click on Start Video and choose your video recorder or your camera. Dominic, send him another request, I think.
Okay, will do.
He's gone.
Oh, he's gone.
Yes.
Okay, that wasn't too conclusive. Let's see if we can do that again. He's back into being a panelist. It's taking time to appear. There he is. We will ask to unmute and ask to start video.
Yes, there he is.
Hello, well done.
Success.
Success. Welcome to the webinar.
Thank you.
So you have
Hi,
on the screen.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to see you as well.
Nice to see you. We're just waiting for the rabbi.
And I'm sorry for all of the mucking around this morning.
That's all right. It's all worked out. We just have to hope we get the rabbi, that's all.
Okay.
Karen, maybe we should get started because we're 10 minutes in.
Yeah, well, we could get started, but we may not get the rabbi still. That's all. I'll only get to a certain point and then we will have to stop. What does everyone think? I am, but you cannot see me. I am, but on, but you cannot see me. What does that mean? Perhaps you could check. He says he is on.
What's the rabbi's name? Like
what is his username?
Name? Yeah.
He can see me.
So what is his username? Because he doesn't appear under Rabbi or Michael or...
Michael, just Michael?
Ah, there's another Michael. Okay.
There's another Michael.
That Michael we've tried.
He's just on as Michael. This one. So if we, hello, is this Rabbi Michael? Hello?
Plus, I think you've got the wrong one.
Okay.
Again, sorry about that.
That's
So
okay.
it doesn't appear as Michael, so it must be a different username.
So yeah, we have a problem of the Rabbi appears as a, yes, Rabbi, could you raise your hand, please? Judy will be joining. Oh, sorry.
We have a raised hand.
And we have a raised hand. That might be our rabbi. Let's have a look. Ah, is this you? Is this you, Rabbi? Oh, hello, is this you, Rabbi? Let's see what's behind. Okay. Is this you, Rabbi? I've just asked you to start your video. Is that you? No. My apologies for that. That wasn't right. Okay. We were still looking for our rabbi. Rabbi, have you raised your hand? Rabbi, could you be appearing as Oriel in Batia? No.
Yeah, because that says Warsaw, yeah. Is it? Can you?
Yeah, it says Zaretsky Warsaw.
That must be it.
Is that it?
Yes, Oriel.
Okay.
Okay. We've now found our rabbi. That is great news. We can officially begin hostilities.
Okay. Do you hear me now?
Yes. Hello. Hi, Rabbi.
I'm sorry. I don't know why Oriel is the Rosh Kolel, and I've no idea why it went on his name. That was the whole problem.
We found you. That's the main thing. That's great.
Okay. I was here the whole time.
Oh. So,
And I was seeing you, and I was saying, hi, guys. Do you see me? I see you.
well, welcome to the world. I know this is the world
Thank
we live in. Okay. All right, are we on?
I think we're on.
You are go.
Yes, we are live. We are on Facebook and we are recording. So,
okay then. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first webinar from ASPJ. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're the Australian Society of Polish Jews and their Descendants, and our aim is to connect people to their heritage, to Polish current events and thinking, as well as to create a bond with the Polish community in Australia. My name is Karen Pakula, and it's my pleasure to welcome a very special guest this evening, Michael Schudrich, the Chief Rabbi of Poland, who will be joining me. Hi, hello there. And the rabbi will be joining me for a conversation from Warsaw in just a few minutes. But first, I'd like to welcome another distinguished visitor from afar, Australia's ambassador to Poland, Lloyd Brodrick, who would like to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Karen. And thanks for allowing me to interject myself briefly into this interview. I just wanted to send my very best wishes to the members of the ASPJ and the broader Jewish community in Australia, and say that I've appreciated the engagement that we've had since I took up my position here a year ago. And I hope you're all coping with the COVID conditions. But I also wanted to say that during my time in Warsaw, I've seen the great respect in which Chief Rabbi Michael Schudrich is held by other members of the diplomatic corps. And I've come to admire the important work he does, not just for the Jewish community in Poland, but also as an advocate for interfaith dialogue and human rights generally. And I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to listen to the whole interview, but I just wanted to say g'day to everyone from Warsaw as well.
Okay. Oh, well, g'day, Ambassador, and thank you very much. At the end of our talk, we'll have a Q&A session. So please, everybody, could you use the Q&A function to ask questions? First, I want to tell you a little bit about our guest. Born and raised in New York, Rabbi Schudrich is the grandson of Polish emigres who arrived in the United States before World War II. After 6 years as the rabbi of a Jewish community in Japan in the 1980s, he arrived in Poland in 1992, just as the country was emerging from the dark days of communism into an open democracy, to work with the Ronald S. Lauder Foundation. In 2000, he became Rabbi of Warsaw and Łódź, and in 2004, the Chief Rabbi of Poland. Over 3 remarkable decades, Rabbi Schudrich has been both a witness to and an enthusiastic participant in the miracle rebirth of Jewish life in Poland. Indeed, he's been credited as the chief architect of this astonishing renaissance. He spends his days counselling those who have just discovered they are Jewish, saving our cemeteries from destruction and challenging anti-Semitism, which unfortunately is a growing concern in Poland as it is elsewhere in the world. For Rabbi Schudrich, being the voice of the Jewish community in Poland is not without its challenges. He's been attacked and has had at least one near-death experience, but has also led to a rich, complex, extraordinary life. In 2016, during a momentous visit to Auschwitz by Pope Francis, the Pope turned to Rabbi Schudrich and said, "Pray for me." Rabbi Schudrich, welcome.
Welcome, thank you. And I apologize for the delay. I was there the whole time, but on the wrong name. But now we have the right rabbi, the right name, so it's all good.
This is all good. This is the Zoom world we live in. That's not a problem. Thank you, Rabbi. Rabbi, first I want to take a step back in time to New York of the 1960s and 70s. Your grandparents had immigrated from Poland, as I said, and your father was a rabbi. And I'm wondering if Poland loomed large. Did you learn about Poland at home, or was Poland discussed fondly, or was it the heart of darkness?
So now I have the wrong answer, and that is it didn't play a very big role.
Right.
I'm already third generation.
Right.
I mean, I knew that my grandparents came from over there. And because my grandparents left before and after World War I, at the conclusion of World War I, Poland reestablishes itself as an independent country for 120 years, from the late 18th century until right after World War I. There was no independent country or political entity called Poland. So my grandfather said he was from Russia. My other grandfather passed away before I met him, and his wife told me that she was from Austria-Hungary, which she was from today. But it became later Poland, and today it's then the Soviet Union, then now it's the Ukraine. And my other grandmother said she was from Galicia. And as a kid growing up in New York, I thought Galicia was a country. What do I know? So actually, it didn't really play a big role growing up. But as I got to be, what was very important to me is I wanted to know more about the Showa as a kid and as a teenager. And then also as a teenager in the late 60s and 70s, early 70s, very much about Soviet Jewry. So when I finished high school, I was looking for a trip to go to, I never did Israel, I wanted to go to Israel. And I found a trip through a friend that was going to Israel and the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. So I kind of want to really go to Israel. I said, wow, we go to the Soviet Union. I'll go to Eastern Europe also. And then it turns out that, well, each part really was a tremendous impact on my life. I never imagined when I was 18 years old that I would be living for 30 years in Poland. But that's what life did. I became fascinated by what's really left behind the Iron Curtain. And while it was very challenging to travel as an independent traveler in the Soviet Union, you could much easier on a US passport travel to Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Poland, which is what I did in the 70s and early 80s.
Right. Tell me, that first trip to Poland during the Soviet era, I believe you smuggled in prayer books, is that right? And joined forces with, was it the Jewish Flying
Correct.
University? Can you tell us about that time? It sounds like quite an adventure.
Okay, so the Jewish Flying University was here in Warsaw, started in '79. I was very honored to be at the second meeting. I mean, I wasn't here for that reason. I was here just visiting. And when I heard about it, so I went to their second meeting. So it was really at the very beginning. And what it really was in the end were young Poles discovering their Jewish roots, teaching each other whatever little bit they knew about Judaism. And it continued all the way till the end of communism in '89.
Right. So for Jews in Poland, the low point of the Soviet era was 1968. So for the benefit of younger people watching, can you tell us what happened and then tell us what was the impact on the Jewish community?
Okay, well, first, actually, in terms of the post-war experience, really the worst time was 1946.
Okay.
I'll get to 68 in just a moment. 1946, there were actually pogroms. There was the pogrom in Kielce, and there were other pogroms. In the immediate post-war period, there was basically civil war in Poland. The Polish communists were fighting the Polish anti-communists, and they were killing each other, and killing was going on, including killing Jews. So that by far was the most difficult period, and that's when most of the Jews left, or many of the Jews left. 68 is something our generation remembers much better because we weren't born in 1946. In 1968, there was food riots, there were beginning struggles for human rights, and the reaction of the ruling Communist Party was to blame it all on Jews and the Zionists. So there became an officially government-sanctioned anti-Semitic campaign, at which point we still don't know exactly how many Jews, but they say 23,000 Jews left, many for Scandinavia, because they wanted to stay close to Poland, but some to Israel, some to the States, some to France. I'm not sure if anyone made it in 68 to Australia. I'm sure someone did.
Yeah.
But thank you for filling me in on that. And what it is that for our generation, meaning the post-war generation, those people born just after the war, let's say the 15 years after the war, where we all remember 68, that is by far the most traumatic and difficult period, because people who had spent their whole lives as identifying as Poles, all of a sudden were told they were Jews, and many of those people felt that they needed to leave, and they left.
Right. And speaking of that, it's the at the moment, well, part of your brief, if you will, is that you counsel people even today who are discovering late in life that they are Jewish. And it must be a huge discovery for someone who's brought up Catholic to have that, to find that out. Can you share some of the stories about the people that you encounter even today?
Okay. Well, as a matter of fact, I met someone today.
Okay.
So it's not only the concept today, but it's today.
Yeah.
And now we have, it's not only discovering later in life, it's sometimes discovering earlier in life, but you're third generation. Right. So you can also discover when you're 15, but it just means that it was your grandparents or even great-grandparents at this point who were the survivors of the Showa. So, for example, this one story is that a woman in her 30s who knew actually pretty much all the time that she had Jewish roots, but her grandmother was one of the very few survivors for the family, which is absolutely typical. Never really talked about it and died before she was born. And her mother kind of continued that tradition of not really talking about it and being very ambivalent. And so this young person, was curious, wondering, wasn't sure what to do about it. And today decided, well, actually last week, because she asked to meet with me, we said, okay, let's meet today, came to see me and say, what can I do? And in this case, it was her mother's mother was Jewish. I actually know some of the other parts of the family. And, so I'm not really thinking that I'm particularly religious, but I want to do something about being Jewish. What am I supposed to do? So we talk about it. And basically what I say is that, everything is in your hands. We can offer this, and, A, B, and C, classes, prayers, Shabbat dinners. When there's no coronavirus, we have a much wider range of activities we can do. Now it's pretty much Zoom and prayers in the synagogue. But God willing, that's going to end at some point. I mean, coronavirus, speedily and in our days. Yeah. And so it's really, the message is to empower the person. This is their heritage. They have as much right to Jewishness as I do. And the question is, how do you want to link in? Where do you want to find a place? So, for example, in this case, I said, listen, the next 10 days, there are two very nice entry points. One is Friday night, the first night in the Sukkah. Now, we will have, for the first time since Corona, we will have a meal because, for Rosh Hashanah, for Pesach, you could all do that. You could always do that at home. We'd like to do it as a community, but you could do it at home. You can't eat in the sukkah, and unless you live in the country. In the city, it's very hard to build a sukkah. You're in an apartment. I mean, it's not like Caulfield where everyone's got a backyard, pretty much. As a friend of mine said, that they got on a plane in New York and Queens, traveled 36 hours, got off the plane, went to Caulfield, never thought he left Queens. But anyway.
But Warsaw is a different story.
Warsaw's different. So it's also in this, it's for many reasons, but also in this case because it's the middle of a city, so you don't have people having homes. So really, our sukkah is a sukkah for many people, and so we're going to have meals with social distancing, which is right now my staff is sitting and trying to figure out a seating plan where there's going to be a seat empty between every other family.
Right.
So and usually we have a nice full sukkah of 100 people the first night. So this year we're going to have 2 sittings.
Right. Well, you've got your hands full there. So
So I just want to say, I said, if you want, come for a few minutes, see the sukkah. She has a child. I said, that's kind of interesting because it's like weird. It's like different. Never seen a sukkah before. So the kid may say, oh, this is, cool. This is interesting. And then, of course, I said Simchat Torah, which I also still haven't figured out how we're going to do Simchat Torah. But we're going to do something happy and fun, but just with distancing.
Gosh, that does sound like
Which
a challenge. The estimates of the Jewish population in Poland today vary really wildly from 8,000 to 40,000. Considering we were 3 million before the war, that's a tiny population. Now, there must be incredibly good people helping us to maintain our heritage and our sacred sites. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
I can, but if I may, I'd like to just return to the question of how many Jews there are in Poland.
Yes.
I could say without a doubt, the number of Jews in Poland today, nobody knows. Why? 3.5 million Jews before the war. This is more or less a number that we know. 90% murdered during the Showa. Still leaving alive about 350,000 Jews in Poland after the war. The vast majority leave Poland in the 25 years after World War II, basically through 68, 69. If you want to feel safe saying the statement, I am a Jew, it makes good sense to leave post-Holocaust, Soviet-occupied, communist Poland. And so most Jews left. The Jews that stayed, most of them agreed with those who left. Stay Jewish, leave communist Poland. Stay in communist Poland, stop being Jewish, to the extent you don't even tell your children or grandchildren. Mm-hmm. So while a couple of 100,000 left, tens of thousands stayed, of which many of them gave up their Jewish identity. So we don't know how many Jews there are. The question is the person I met today, is she in the number with her son? And what about her mother, who's not so much wanting to talk about it, and about her sister, who does some things? So it becomes in a completely impossible, I can't say irrelevant number, but because we're in the midst of a discovery. So it's impossible to say how many people will in the end decide to do something positively Jewish in their life. And as I want to say, it depends how well I do my job as to what the final number will be. And if you could remember just 3 words about the Jewish community of Poland, the 3 words are work in progress. So as I like to say, we have moved in the last 30 years from a dying, stagnating, dysfunctional Jewish community to reemerging vibrant, dysfunctional Jewish community.
Right.
As a friend of them said, oh, you're like everybody else now. So now, just to answer about, yes, just to give you kind of the magnitude of trying to take care of cemeteries. In 1939, the beginning of World War II, 3.5 million Jews, said it already, 1,400 cemeteries to meet the needs of a living Jewish community of 3.5 million. In every little town, big city had a cemetery. Today, in 2020, with some tens of thousands of Jews, we have about 1,400 cemeteries. That's the scale of the challenge.
Mm.
And while we know we can't do everything, we never stop from trying. This is what it says in Pirkei Avot, Lo alechem lacha ligmor. It's not up to you to finish the work, but neither can you desist from trying to do something. So really, we're dependent on our non-Jewish neighbors and friends to help us. And amazingly, and I think to some people it's really a big surprise, that in almost in every town, village, city where there is no Jewish population today, we do find people that want to do something positive to preserve Jewish memory. We're still, as I said before, work in progress, very much work in progress. We're still trying to find all these people. We're trying to connect all these people, trying to bring them together. We had an online conference a few months ago, the first one really to try to bring Jews from abroad and non-Jews living here and Jews living here together to see what can we do to better preserve our patrimony, better preserve cemeteries, synagogues, and the memories of Jews throughout Poland.
Right, right. What about the Poland Museum, which opened in 2013? What was the impact on the general population's acceptance of the country's Jewish history?
You know, no doubt very positive. The exact impact is difficult to say because it's still in the first years, and then it closed during the beginning of the pandemic. And then it reopened, but only exhibitions, not the main exhibition, only the temporary exhibitions. So, the last, 6-7 months, we don't know,
Yeah.
the impact has been very different, unfortunately. But there's no question that a younger and older Pole visiting Poland Museum will leave on saying, wow. My dream is that anyone who visits the Poland Museum, any non-Jew who visits, will leave understanding what the Jews gave to Poland and how important the Jews were to Polish history, culture, civilization. And that every Jew should leave understanding what Poland means to us. 1,000 years of creating, the most vibrant Jewish community, if not one of the most vibrant Jewish community ever to exist in diaspora. So that's the dual function. But there's no question that Poland is really helping tremendously and will continue to be even more important.
Right. And another very important site, a pilgrimage, is Auschwitz, which attracts visitors from all over the world. Now, is there any danger that the memory of the Jews who perished there will once again be subsumed by Poland's own memorialization, as it was, I think, sort of in the Soviet era?
Okay. In the Soviet era, it wasn't even the Polish narrative subsuming the Jewish narrative. It was the communist narrative subsuming everyone. In other words, the story in Auschwitz was, until 1989, that the fascists built it and we Soviets liberated it. And therefore, you could find the word Jew somewhere, or even the word Pole somewhere. But the main message was the glory of the Soviet Union and the glory of the Red Army. And so for myself, as a young American Jew visiting Auschwitz in the 70s, it was really very hard. Not only you're visiting the most horrible genocide site of the Jewish people, then it's almost like being shamed again. We can't even say what the truth is. And really immediately after the fall of communism, the State Museum in Auschwitz started to change. And there were many interlocutors from abroad, Jews coming and explaining and talking and working on it. Today's director, Piotr Sawinski, really is very careful in making sure that it's very clear that the overwhelming number of victims in Auschwitz are Jews. I don't see any threat that it's going to change, even with certain voices today that we're not happy about. Those voices are not minimizing the Jewish losses. What they want to do is to make sure, they want to make sure that everyone also knows how the Poles suffered. And the big issue today, I'm probably segueing into the next thing, if I may, and that is the anti-Semitism here is, or the biggest problem here is not what we would classically call anti-Semitism, which does exist and it's a problem, but not wanting to talk about the bad things the Poles did to the Jews during the Showa. And that's a very difficult point. During the discussion of Jedwabne, where Poles killed their Jewish neighbors on July 10th, 1941, approaching the 60th anniversary, meaning 2000, 2001, there was a very intense national discussion where many people said, you know, we Poles, some of us also did horrible things. And what you're seeing now is a swing back among some, not among all at all, but some saying, you know, enough talking about what the Poles did bad, you know, maybe they did it, maybe they didn't. So there are actually three groups today. A very large group that says, yes, we know some Poles did horrible things and we have to talk about it. Another group that says, yeah, well, some people did bad things, but why do we have to talk about it? And the smallest group is saying, no Pole ever did anything bad. And that's a real challenge, and we're working on it.
Right. Because well, the political landscape has changed a lot, hasn't it, since the PiS government came to power, and I think the Holocaust law, which for people watching makes it an offence to accuse Poland of complicity in Nazi war crimes, was a real shock to Jews around the world. Did I get that wrong?
One word. It's a crime to falsely accuse.
Okay.
So therefore, which is why I was very much against the law, because who's going to decide that? Does that mean every local judge is now a PhD in history? How can you possibly convict someone of a crime falsely accusing someone? And plus the law didn't apply to academics. So an academic could say it, or an artist could say it, but a regular person couldn't say it. I mean, it was an absurd law. It was very poorly written. The idea was to protect the good Polish name. And actually, it's a classic story of a law that intended to do A, and it did the exact opposite. And it tended to protect the good name of Poland, and never was Poland's name as bad as it was after they passed the law. A classic situation where Parliament passes a law to achieve a goal, and they achieve the opposite of the goal.
But my understanding is the law still exists, but it's no longer a criminal offence. Is that right?
It's still on the books. It's no longer a criminal offence, and no one has really been charged on that law. Right.
Okay. So should we be concerned at all that there is a silencing of any of our history, of any of our narrative?
Okay. So the bigger challenge is what are they teaching in the schools?
Yeah.
What's going on TV? The fact that they don't like a few of the professors that are saying things that what the Poles did, and they're thinking about ways maybe they're going to take them to court, that's wrong, and it's anti-democratic. But that's not the key problem. The key problem is, what are they teaching today in the schools? And I'm not an expert on that. And I also look at a problem, and I don't want to, as much as we need to define the problem, much more important is to find the solution, and that is teacher training. We need always more teacher training, because teachers teach what they feel most comfortable and most knowledgeable about. So if it's in the curriculum, but the teacher doesn't know the subject well, so it'll be in 20 minutes or a half hour. If the teacher really knows it, it's going to be a 3-day lesson. And that's about any topic, not just about Jewish-Polish relations, right? When a teacher knows something, when your literature teacher loves Shakespeare but doesn't like Dickens, you're going to spend a lot more time on Shakespeare than Dickens. So what we need to, I hope that's clear what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is to make more and more Polish teachers become acquainted with what happened during the war. And also, importantly, the Jewish contribution to Poland before the war, the 1,000-year history, the symbiosis, the Jewish, how Polish literature, how Polish science is different because Jews were here and contributed to that wealth of civilization.
Right, right. I think there've been some pretty strong words that have come out of Israel in years since the Holocaust law came into effect. And I was just wondering how relations are between Israel and Poland today.
Relations with Israel and Poland today are excellent, because they both want to be in close contact. First of all, they're both governments, again, without my personal opinion, that feel very close to President Trump. They're both governments that position themselves right of center politically. And so there's commonality there. Plus the fact that deeper reasons, the Poles always had a certain very positive sentiment towards Israel, because the Arabs in the 60s and 70s, even at the beginning of the 80s, were supported by the Soviet Union. Poles hate the Soviet Union. Therefore, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And the next reason, which is most people are not aware of, is that Poles have a tremendous respect for Israel, because they take a look at Israel, the small little country surrounded by so many enemies. Thank God in the last few weeks we have 2 new peace treaties with very small Arab countries, but still peace treaties, and that's great. But they look for decades, in the sea, surrounded by a sea of enemies, saying we want to throw the Jews into the sea, and yet they have a vibrant cultural life, vibrant economy, vibrant, very strong military. Poland also sees itself as a country surrounded by enemies. Certainly Russia to the east. Germany was a threat to the west. So historically, Poland sees itself as also a country surrounded by enemies, and they want to be like Israel. I've heard this from leading Polish politicians. We want to be like Israel, which means we want to be able to stand up, even though we may be surrounded by non-friends, and we want to be strong and we want to be vibrant.
Right, right. Now, just a bit of a shifting of the gears. I want to talk about an incident that happened in 2010, which you probably will remember, when you narrowly missed a tragic fate when you declined an invitation to join the ill-fated flight of Polish dignitaries to a commemoration in Russia because it flew on Shabbat. The plane crashed in Smolensk, killing all on board, including President Kaczynski, which is such a tragedy. So how did that affect you?
Well, it was obviously a very difficult time, first on a national level, also personally. The first thing I react to is when people, it was a miracle that you didn't fly. I said, I hope it's not a miracle that the rabbi doesn't fly on Shabbos. So but the fact is that the reality is, first of all, as happens, there was competition between the then Prime Minister Donald Tusk and the President Lech Kaczynski. And so Donald Tusk went to Katyn and flew to Smolensk in the same plane, in the same airport 3 days earlier. And I was on that plane because it wasn't Shabbat. So that even was more intense for me that I was on the same plane 3 days earlier, landing in the same airport, but it wasn't cloudy.
Mm.
And therefore, everything was fine. But I knew at least 20 people on the plane quite well, including the president and his wife, Maria. And just the priest from the chancellery, the priest in Jewry, the Russian Orthodox priest that was there was a very, very good friend. And so it was just, it's kind of like a fog the next few weeks, because I spent my time going to, I don't remember how many funerals.
Right, right. What a devastating time. Look, Rabbi, thank you very much. I think looking at the time now, and I think that it might be time to throw to some questions. So I'm going to ask my colleague Lena Fishman if she could take over and ask a few questions for us. Hey.
Okay, hi. So, Rabbi, we've got a few questions here so far. Have you noticed a change in attitude or reaction in the past 5 years of those people who discover their Jewish heritage?
No.
Okay.
In other words, it's actually very interesting. I don't see an increase or a decrease because of what's going on in the political world. It seems, this is so far, and again, there's no academic study. This is just from the number of people I'm meeting and people coming to the synagogue, not coming to the synagogue, coming to events, falling away, more people coming. It seems to have stayed level.
Okay.
And I think it's interesting that I think perhaps social pressure pushes some people away and pulls some people more in.
Another question, is there a reason to be concerned by the recent passing of the law banning the export of kosher meat from Poland? Is there a concerning unstated undertone to that law?
Okay, so first of all, the law is not passed. The law was introduced into the parliament and it passed the parliament and now goes to the Senate because there's two houses here. The Senate is much less powerful than the parliament. It's now being discussed by the Senate. The Senate will most likely vote on it on October 13th, will almost certainly send back the law to the parliament with their corrections, with their additions. The parliament then needs to decide whether or not they accept the changes from the Senate or not. The parliament has the right to reject everything the Senate proposes and just go back to the original law, and they could pass it. And then it goes to the president. Then the president either signs it or vetoes it, or can also send it to the Constitutional Court. If he passes it, it becomes law. If he sends it to the Constitutional Court, then the Constitutional Court has to deal with it. If he vetoes it, it goes back to the parliament, where parliament has the opportunity to try to override the veto by a 2/3 vote. And I hope that wasn't all too boring. And at each point, it's a question mark. Will the parliament accept the changes the Senate does? My guess is probably not, but that's for political reasons. Unfortunately, also people should be aware of the fact that this is an updating of a law concerning the protection of animals. It's a 35-page document, of which 2.5 pages are about religious slaughter. So it's about many other things. It's not just about shchita, and it's also halal. I don't want to go into too many more details, but there is a huge fight going on right now, primarily right now being led by the farmers, who stand to lose billions in income. And there are many people, I'm fighting it on the moral level. What's the problem? We'll still have shechita for our people. That's not a problem, because locally we're allowed to do it. The problem is by saying that export of religiously slaughtered meat is somehow wrong and therefore banned, but regular exported meat is okay. That is just completely, it's a lie. I mean, it's saying that shechita is worse than the regular way they do it, the non-Jewish way, which is pre-stunning. Pre-stunning, when done correctly, can be quite humane. Shechita is very humane. Pre-stunning, when done incorrectly, is horribly painful to the animal. And the big question is what percent fails? Depending on the study, between 6.6 even up to 25%. So the problem is often happens in situations in politics, because the parliament is politics. In the end, it's about the person who proposed the law being able to show that he can get it passed the way he wants because he's politically powerful. And what's in the law, in some ways, only becomes secondary. And so now it's a huge power play within one party, the other party, within the large party, people dissenting, and then the head of the party wanting to show that he controls everything. So it's a huge political mess, unfortunately, at our cost.
Okay, I have another question for you, Rabbi. Do you work with the Forum for Dialogue Among the Nations?
I work very close with the forum, with Andrzej Favazny for many years, and I'm a big supporter, I'm a big fan.
Okay. Another question, how have the social attitudes of the current PiS government affected the Jewish community there, especially regarding the recent legislation regarding ritual slaughter? It's a similar question, so.
Okay, it's about, first of all, we say religious slaughter, because ritual slaughter sounds like we're doing voodoo on the cow. We're not doing voodoo, we're doing shechita, which is highly humane. I've had an opportunity a few days ago to speak to a Polish surgeon who said, I know that the way you do it is actually more humane than the way we do it. Because once you cut the trachea and there's no oxygen between the lungs and the brain, the animal loses immediate, you lose consciousness. You can't have consciousness when there's no oxygen going to the brain. And therefore, often that the animal loses consciousness before even the animal realizes something has happened. But I don't want to get into the whole shechita thing. In terms of the impact here, it's the bigger problem was the presidential campaign, and not the president himself, but the public TV that was looking to bash his opponent, who was the mayor of Warsaw, Trzaskowski. So President Duda was running against the mayor of Warsaw, and President Duda won with about 51%, meaning the whole difference was 41 to 49%, which was a very close race. And so public television, which unfortunately is pretty much controlled by the Law and Justice Party, constantly portrayed Trzaskowski as being a horrible choice and disloyal to Poland. And one of the things is that he wants to give money to Jews for reprivatization, and that means he's not really Polish. And it was so bad, I would say it no longer bordered on anti-Semitism. It was anti-Semitism, and the community here spoke out against it, and we denounced it, and we're in the process of seeing how it's all going to play out.
Okay, another question, Rabbi. What is Polish Catholic Church's influence on relationships between Polish Jews and the rest of the Polish population?
Okay, so the Catholic Church, we have wonderful ties with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church had huge impact on the country. It's a very multi-layered subject. The church still has tremendous influence, but people say they're losing influence because some of their current stands. And particularly on LGBTQ. And so they're losing influence among younger people. But I have a very close relationship with the Catholic Church. They're coming out. They're supportive of shechita, and so certainly they are helpful. and on Polish-Jewish relations. Just that the question is, at what direction is their influence going? Is it getting larger or smaller?
Okay, I've got another question from one of our participants who said, my parents, who were Holocaust survivors that refused to go back to Poland after the war, they said that anti-Semitism was in their mother's milk. What, were they correct? Okay. There is no such thing as anti-Semitism in the mother's milk. That's just, it's a very painful statement to Poles. It's something that Yitzhak Shamir said. And in his time, I understand, and I understand survivors that say it. Now, it's reflecting their very deep pain. If it's in their mother's milk, then how do we have thousands of Poles that saved Jews during the war? If it's in their mother's milk, how do we have today hundreds, thousands of Poles helping us save Jewish memory of cemeteries and synagogues throughout Poland? So when we hear that statement, what we have to understand is that it's reflecting very deep pain of survivors. And perhaps it's even reflecting something that isn't obvious, and that is that Polish Jews expected more from their non-Jewish neighbors. There was anti-Semitism here before, no question. But perhaps it's so painful because the fact that the guy I was playing football with a few months ago now is not going to help me save my life is, on a personal level, so more painful than an anonymous German soldier who's shooting at me. And so that's not to make things better or worse, but really to see that this whole, this hurt that survivors feel towards Poland is based on their personal experience and is accurate, but also may be based on the fact that they really expected more from the Poles in the end of the day. Okay, another question. Are there programs dealing with the Showa in primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions?
Yes. I mean, it's very much present in the curriculum. And again, what I said before, it's in the curriculum. The question is, how much is it really taught? And I don't know that. All I know is we need more teacher training. No, it's of any teacher that wants to do it, it's there. What can we do to encourage teachers to do it more and better?
The next question is, how do the local Poles view the increasing Israeli investment in Poland? Is it welcomed, or does it have the potential to reopen old stereotypes about Jewish-owned buildings in Poland?
I don't know if I feel qualified to answer that, which is maybe in itself the answer. That I don't read articles about it. I don't have any sense that I think that many Poles are appreciated because they have like really nice now shopping malls and other things. But I haven't heard any kind of negative feedback over the Israelis investing in the country.
Okay, another question. What is the main force influencing increase in anti-Semitism in Poland?
No doubt it's linked in.
Hold on, we've just lost sound.
Okay.
Yep.
Am I back? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. It unfortunately is reflecting what's going on in almost every country in Europe and the United States, where yesterday President Trump could not articulate the sentence that there's something wrong with white supremacy in the United States, where it is a problem. It's fundamentally that in many countries, political leaders see that these extreme right people are going to vote for them, and so therefore they're reluctant to condemn them. And it's a struggle, but it doesn't make me feel better that it's worse in other places.
Another question, do you work with the Khabad movement in Poland?
The two Chabad Shlichim, Rabbi Stambler and Rabbi Gorari, Rabbi Stambler in Warsaw, Rabbi Gorari, we work very closely together. Now, the reality is at the beginning, it was bumpy. When they first arrived, I was here already for many years. They arrived. We had to figure out how it was going to work out. But the last several years, probably the closest relationship of any chief rabbi with Chabad Shlichim, perhaps in all of Europe.
Another question, can you please tell us something positive that is happening in Poland?
Sure. More Jews want to be Jewish. More Jews are doing Jewish things, including we just opened a little bit more than a year ago a kosher food pantry, thanks to our partner from Detroit, Michigan, United States, Yad Ezra, where we're now delivering to needy Jews and also to almost all of the living righteous Gentiles in Warsaw. We're also delivering to them because this is our responsibility. We have a very vibrant JCC in Warsaw. We have about 4 or 5 years ago, we opened Hillel, which I don't think exists in Australia, but it's the very big in North America, the organization for university students and graduate students. And that has also been very successful. And we have more and we have before Corona, we actually had 5 kosher restaurants in Warsaw. Now, many of them serviced obviously tourists, but we, the local community, benefited.
Another question, assuming that there has been a huge drop-off in Jewish tourists this year due to COVID, how has the local Jewish population been affected? Do they rely on servicing these tourists, or have they had the opportunity to focus on themselves and not be distracted by the Jewish tourist groups?
Very interesting question. Thank you. Whoever asked that, very interesting. Clearly, we love the tourists. We love the visitors, and they're not really tourists. Tourists go to Paris and go to London. They go to, to Sydney and to Melbourne. They go to the opera and the harbor in Sydney. Most Jews are not tourists coming to Poland, and so it's our great responsibility and honor to be able to help when Jews visit Poland on this very challenging and intense experience. Jewish tourism, if I said it went down to 0, I don't think I'm overstating. It's gone for now. And it's wise. People should not go on vacation to other countries, not even vacation, even pilgrimages during coronavirus. Stay home, stay safe, and stay happy. How is it affected? It's interesting. Someone said to me, this Rosh Hashanah was really, there was something special because it was just us. And we did it. And we had a beautiful davening, and it was lively, and it was, everybody participated. And I missed the visitors. The visitors are wonderful. But the fact that we now can do it all our own is also a certain sign of maturing of a Jewish community. So we look forward to the day when the visitors will come back. But in the meantime, we're also learning to become even more independent.
Mm-hmm. Another question, how many active Jewish communities are there in Poland?
Okay, I would say officially it's 10. And some of them can be as small as 30, 40 people. But the largest community by far is Warsaw, and afterwards is Krakow, Wrocław, Łódź, Łódź, with smaller communities in Gdańsk, Poznan, Legnica, Szczecin, Bielsko-Biała, Katowice, and Lublin. I hope I remembered them all. If I forgot one, I'm sorry.
The Jewish community in Krakow seems to have a disconnect between the official community leadership and the Jewish community. How do you see this being resolved?
Slowly and cautiously.
Okay. Another question. It is impossible to teach Polish history without acknowledging the input of the Jews. Are there Jewish educators involved with writing the curriculum and ensuring accuracy?
Unfortunately, curricula is not my specialty. I do know in the 90s, they really worked on the Holocaust curriculum, and it was done with Jewish experts from abroad. Where is it today? It's being very much done through Poland Museum, where we have outstanding Jewish educators. But I'm not qualified to answer, to give what we call chapter and verse. And so I just generally yes, but I can't give details.
One more question. If things go wrong for peace in time, do you expect another 1968?
No. I don't, but it can't, listen, it can't be ruled out in any country. And while this country does actually have the 68 that happened, I don't see it happening again. And I certainly hope it doesn't happen. And we had a few of us. I mean, it was a private meeting, so I'm talking public about private meeting. It's kind of an oxymoron. But we met with President Duda about 2 weeks ago, specifically on the fact that around his campaign there were anti-Semitic voices, and saying that this is something that has to be fought. And he was very sympathetic. And so that gives hope. The problem is that, like many other European and in the US, there is a growing, still not very big, maybe 6%, but there is a neo-Nazi group that is finding its voice, mostly among disenfranchised youth. And that's something that's serious that needs to be fought.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi. Karen, I'll leave it up to you to finalize. That was the last question.
All righty.
Thank you, Lena.
Thanks, Lena. Okay, thank you, Rabbi Schudrich, for your time. It's been a fascinating discussion. So, and I want to thank everyone who's watching. And if you want to explore more about Polish Jewish affairs, please take a look at the ASPJ page on Facebook or our website at polishjews.org.au. We have constant news updates and hold 2 major annual events: the Sławek Award in honor of those who have enhanced the bond between the Polish and Jewish communities, and the ASPJ Oration, a lecture by a celebrated guest speaker. Have a great night, everyone, and have a great day, Rabbi Schudrich. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, apologies for having problems.
No. We're glad we made it. That was terrific.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening.
Yeah.
Be well. Bye.
Bye.